Private Laura Kane was sweating through her undershirt by 08:30 a.m., and it wasn't because the Texas sun had already begun hammering the Fort Braddock training range. She had been hauling heavy cardboard silhouettes, each one about as tall as she was, from the supply truck to the firing pits for 2 hours straight. Her gloves were dusty, her hair clung damp against the inside of her patrol cap, and her shoulders ached from the straps cutting into her skin. From which city in the world are you watching this video today? Let us know in the comments. And if you believe that heroes come in the most unexpected forms, don't forget to subscribe. Stacking targets wasn't glamorous, but it was her assigned duty for the week. She'd been at the base only 3 months, fresh out of basic, and the training NCOs made sure the newest privates earned their keep. That meant hauling, stacking, taping, and replacing shot-up silhouettes, while the actual marksmen practiced hitting them from distances Laura had only read about. She tried to keep her head down, her pace steady. This wasn't her show. It was the sniper sections. About a dozen soldiers in ghillie suits and camo-painted faces occupied the firing line that morning, each behind a high-end bolt-action rifle with optics that probably cost more than her entire paycheck for the month. Behind them, instructors moved methodically, giving corrections, adjusting scope settings, and calling out wind holds. Laura placed another target against the plywood backer and stepped aside. She could feel someone watching her. When she glanced up, Sergeant First Class Mitchell, the section's senior sniper instructor, was studying her. His face was unreadable under the brim of his boonie hat. "You ever shot past 100 yards, Kane?" he asked, voice carrying easily over the dusty breeze. She blinked. "Yes, Sergeant." He smirked. "What? Pellet gun at a county fair?" A couple of the other snipers chuckled. Laura's cheeks flushed, but she kept her voice level. "My father was a high-power rifle competitor, Sergeant. We shot long range every weekend." Mitchell tilted his head as if considering, then shrugged. "Good for you. Get those silhouettes swapped out on lanes 5 through 8. Shooters burned through them." The conversation ended there, but she caught a few smirks from the other soldiers as she moved down the line. She knew what they saw: a short, wiry private with dust on her sleeves, not someone they'd expect to touch a precision rifle. It was just before lunch when things took a turn. The wind, which had been steady at about 5 miles per hour from right to left, started to shift. The range flags twitched, then drooped, then snapped the other way in short bursts. Mirage shimmered heavily above the baked dirt, making the targets dance in the scope. Hits became less consistent, and Mitchell called a halt to reset. "Wind's eating you alive," he said. "We'll wait it out." One of the younger snipers, Specialist Turner, set his rifle down with a sigh. "I swear this setup's cursed. I've been chasing impacts all morning." "It's not the rifle," Mitchell said flatly. Laura had been standing a few yards away, waiting for the clear signal so she could replace more shot-up silhouettes. Without thinking, she said, "You're overholding. Mirage is running lighter than the flags show." Every head turned toward her. Mitchell arched an eyebrow. "That's so, Private?" Laura hesitated. "Yes, Sergeant. The shimmer's leaning about half what those flags say. Might try coming back a 1/4 mil." Turner snorted, but Mitchell didn't. He adjusted his own rifle on the bench, dialed the correction she'd suggested, and squeezed off a shot. The spotter called, "Impact dead center." A few murmurs ran through the line. Mitchell glanced at her, noted. After chow, they returned to the firing line for a series of 800-yard engagements. Laura was back in the pits, replacing torn silhouettes when she heard her name. "Kane, front and center." Mitchell stood next to an empty firing position, a sleek M2010 ESR resting on the bipod. "You talk a big game about reading wind. Let's see you put a round where it counts." The others were listening now, some with folded arms, some clearly waiting for her to crash and burn. She'd learned in basic that moments like this weren't tests you asked for, but she didn't walk away from them either. "Yes, Sergeant." She knelt beside the rifle, ran her eyes over it, bolt locked open, chamber clear. The scope was a high-end Schmidt & Bender. Turrets zeroed for 100 yards. She settled prone, adjusted the bipod legs, snugged the stock into her shoulder. "Target's at 800, Mitchell said. Full-size steel silhouette right of that painted rock. Wind's twitchy, flags are lying." Laura studied the Mirage through the scope. It wasn't a perfect boil. It bent gently left, flattening in waves. She thought of her father's voice. "Trust the shimmer more than the cloth." The cloth reacts to gusts. The shimmer shows the average. Hold .4 left, she said quietly. She closed the bolt, settled her breathing, and pressed the trigger. The rifle bucked, and a heartbeat later, the steel rang. Impact, someone called. She cycled the bolt, reacquired, adjusted for a slightly stronger push. Second shot, another hit, third shot hit. When she cleared the rifle, Mitchell's expression hadn't changed much, but there was a flicker in his eyes that wasn't there before. Not bad, Kane. Over the next week, she found herself volunteered as an extra set of eyes on the spotting scope whenever the section trained. She still hauled targets, still swept brass, but now Mitchell would occasionally nod toward an open lane and say, "See what you can do." One morning, they ran a 1,000-yard challenge. Each shooter had 5 rounds, no sighters, scoring on hits only. The wind was brutal, gusting hard enough to make the range flag snap and the mirage ripple like water. Laura was on the scope for Turner again, calling holds. She tracked the gusts, waited for the 2-second lulls, and fed him adjustments that kept his impacts inside the silhouette. They ended with 4 out of 5 hits, one of the better scores of the morning. Mitchell walked by, glanced at the log sheet and said, "She's calling your wind?" "Yes, Sergeant," Turner admitted. Mitchell grunted. Explains the hits. The real turning point came during a joint exercise with a visiting Special Forces sniper team. Halfway through the day, one of their shooters went down with a migraine, and their team leader, Warrant Officer Hughes, needed a replacement for the final 1,000-yard event. Mitchell didn't hesitate. "Kane, grab a rifle." There was a ripple of disbelief down the line. Hughes raised an eyebrow but didn't argue. They gave her a Mech 22 ASR in Tyondra Norma, already doped for 1,000. The wind was ugly, switching direction every few seconds, heavy mirage dancing over the berm. Laura settled prone, breathing slow. She tracked the shimmer until she found the average slight right push, about 3/4 value. She held .6 right, squeezed, and watched the vapor trail arc into the target. The steel rang loud and deep. Second shot, adjusted for a sudden left gust, still a hit. Third hit. Fourth hit. Fifth hit. 5 for 5 at 1,000. When she stood, the range was quiet, except for the ringing steel and the faint hiss of wind over the berm. Hughes looked at Mitchell and said, "She's not in your section? Fix that." Hughes's endorsement didn't change her duty assignment on paper. She was still range maintenance, still signed for the same broom and tape rolls every morning. But in practice, things shifted overnight. The next day, Mitchell called her over before first formation. "You'll still do your regular tasks," he said, "but when I tell you to get on the glass or behind a rifle, you move. Understood?" "Yes, Sergeant." From then on, it became a rhythm. Morning, replace targets, sweep brass, tape silhouettes. Afternoon, slide in behind a spotting scope or prone out behind a rifle for a demo shot. The section's regular spotters learned to trust her calls. Her voice was steady, her corrections concise. Some of the others on base started noticing. At Chow, a supply clerk asked her, "You the one who went 5 for 5 at a grand in front of Hughes?" She didn't answer, just kept moving down the line, but inside she felt that rare mix of pride and caution. Attention could be a gift, but in the Army, it could also be a spotlight you didn't want. 2 weeks later, the sniper section was tapped for a base-wide marksmanship demonstration. Brass from multiple units, and even a few civilian defense contractors would be watching. The demo's final event was the confidence shot, a single round at a steel plate 1,000 yards out, called cold, no warm-ups. Mitchell pulled the section aside. "I'm running it with Kane in the chair." That got a few raised eyebrows. "She's not even MOS qualified," Turner said before catching himself. Mitchell's voice was flat. "She's qualified to make the call." The morning of the demo, the range felt like a stage. Rows of folding chairs under awnings, cameras on tripods, a low murmur from the spectators. The air was warm, but not oppressive. The wind a steady 6 miles per hour from left to right with small dips every few seconds. Mitchell lay prone behind the rifle, an M2010 in 3000 Win Mag. Laura crouched beside him, eye glued to the spotting scope. She watched the mirage, steady lean left to right, smooth with the occasional boil when the gusts eased. 1.1 left, she said quietly. "Shoot in the boil." Mitchell's finger tightened. The rifle barked, and the plate rang like a church bell. The crowd applauded, but Laura didn't move. She just logged the call in the data book, the same as always. Afterward, as the crowd dispersed, Colonel Reeves approached. "You're Kane, right? The wind reader?" "Yes, sir." "I've read the after-action from Hughes' team. You ever think about taking the sniper school assessment?" Laura's answer was automatic. "Not my billet, sir." Reeves studied her for a moment. Maybe it should be. That comment stayed with her. A month later, opportunity came in a way no one expected. It was the final week of August, the air heavy with heat. The range was booked for a joint night fire exercise with an Air Force Combat Search and Rescue CSAR detachment. Their mission profile involved extracting a downed pilot while under simulated hostile observation, meaning snipers on overwatch would have to neutralize threat silhouettes in low light. Laura was working late in the pits, swapping targets under red light when Mitchell appeared. "Spotter's down with a migraine. You're up." The overwatch position was a rise 1,100 yards from the farthest target. Mitchell settled behind the rifle, Laura on the glass. Even under night vision, the mirage was faint, the wind harder to read. She relied on the movement of grass and the subtle drift of tracer rounds from a separate lane. "Half a mil left. Low light Boyle," she called. Mitchell's shot broke. The IR strobe on the target blinked, hit. They worked through 12 more engagements, each one clean. The CSAR team extracted their pilot without a single miss from Overwatch. When the controllers called Index, the Air Force detachment leader sought Laura out to shake her hand. "Hell of a skill set for someone not in the section," he said. By now, her reputation had spread beyond Fort Braddock. One Friday afternoon, a civilian in plain khakis showed up during open-range maintenance hours. He had the look of someone who didn't waste movement. Tall, fit, eyes scanning without obvious focus. He introduced himself simply as Mr. Connors and asked for Mitchell. They spoke briefly off to the side, then both turned to look at her. "Kane," Mitchell called, "show him the 1,000." The test was quick. 3 rounds at a 12-inch plate at 1,000 yards, each one cold bore. She ran the corrections, fired, and heard 3 solid rings come back across the heat haze. Connors gave a slow nod. "You read wind like you've been doing it your whole life." Laura kept her answer simple. "My father taught me, sir." It was late September when the moment came that truly cemented her place in the section's unofficial roster. A visiting unit from the 82nd Airborne was running a moving target drill at 900 yards. The target track had been jury-rigged and was running slightly erratic, starting and stopping in unpredictable bursts. Their shooter was good, but his spotter was struggling to keep up. Mitchell leaned toward her. "Think you can run moving holds?" "Yes, Sergeant." She slid behind the glass, tracked the target's stutter-step motion, and timed her calls with the smooth sections of its path. "Lead point 8. Watch for the pause mark now." The shot hit clean, right in the chest of the steel silhouette. They ran it 5 more times, each one a hit. When the drill ended, the 82nd shooter walked over and shook her hand without a word. That meant more than any applause. Her final test, though she didn't know it at the time, came during the base's quarterly readiness evaluation. The sniper section was tasked with providing overwatch for a simulated convoy route. Halfway through, the exercise controllers announced a loss of one of the sniper teams. Radio silence, no visual contact. The section needed to reassign roles on the fly. Mitchell didn't hesitate. "Kane, grab your kit, you're my spotter." The final phase of the exercise involved engaging staggered targets at 600, 800, and 1,200 yards, with shifting winds from 3 o'clock to 6 o'clock quartering. She read the flags, the shimmer, and even the dust from impacts on a separate lane to make her calls. Every single engagement landed. When they returned to the staging area, the evaluation officer asked Mitchell for his notes. He just said, "If she's not in the section by next quarter, you're wasting a shooter." That night, alone in her barracks room, Laura pulled out the small black notebook she'd been keeping since arriving at Fort Braddock. It was filled with wind charts, mirage sketches, hold formulas, and range logs. At the very back, she added a line. "One day, my own glass, my own rifle." Until then, she would keep stacking targets, sweeping brass, and waiting for the moments when someone needed a hit that couldn't be left to chance. Because when those moments came, they wouldn't be looking for a rank or a billet. They'd be looking for the one person who could read the wind like it was a printed page. And she would be ready.